Hello, everyone. Tonight we're not soaring with gods or mingling with emperors. Nope. Tonight, we're wading knee-deep into one of the worst jobs in human history, the night soil man of the Middle Ages. Picture this. The moon's barely a sliver. The streets glisten with mysterious puddles. And you, yes, you're clutching a creaky wooden pail and a hook. Forget nights, forget feasts. You are on the clock for medieval waste management. And trust me, this is not the kind of royal flush anyone wants. Fun fact, before you even think about complaining about your day job, remember that. For centuries, people literally got paid to shovel other people's poop under cover of darkness. And if you're the kind of person who can't even empty the cat's litter box without gagging, well, maybe don't listen to this one while eating. If you're tuning in from, say, Singapore at 3 a.m. or Dublin at 7 in the morning, leave a comment below and tell me what unholy hour you're listening at. I love imagining which corner of the world someone is bravely facing medieval filth with me tonight. Go ahead and tap that subscribe button if you want more history. That's a little off the beaten path. And ring the bell so you don't miss when we dive into even grubbier corners of the past. Now, close the door. Maybe light a candle or some incense if you've got it. And get ready to follow me into the reeking alleyways of the Middle Ages tonight. You're the night soil man. You're lying there in the kind of straw mattress that promises more itches than comfort. Your face buried in the crook of your elbow, hoping for just 5 more minutes of peace before the world wakes up and remembers you exist. But peace, like silk underpants or a fresh-smelling breeze, is a rare luxury in your line of work. Outside your window, the darkness hangs thick as a woolen cloak, and the city holds its breath. Then it comes, the bell. That ancient rust-flecked monstrosity in the cathedral tower starts its midnight song. If you can call the groaning clang of medieval iron a song, it's not a gentle call to prayer or a delicate invitation to contemplation. No, this bell rings out like someone's dropped an anvil from a rooftop onto the church steps loud, unyielding, and with a clear message, get up. The city's bowels are calling, you know what's next, and so does everyone else in your little rented room. The mice in the rafters pause. The dog downstairs lets out a disgruntled snort. And somewhere, the baker across the alley grumbles and rolls over, safe in the knowledge that his early mornings still aren't as bad as yours. You swing your legs out of bed and immediately regret it as your toes meet the cold, sticky floor. It's not worth asking what made it sticky. You've learned the hard way that, in the Middle Ages, curiosity isn't just dangerous. It's likely unsanitary. You fumble for your uniform, which, let's be honest, is mostly a collection of discarded rags, a patch coat that's seen more winters than you have, and a scarf that doubles as a nose guard. People talk about knights donning shining armor. You get to wrap yourself in last week's mystery stains. There's a moment, as you tie your boots with hands still clumsy from sleep, when you ask yourself, how did it come to this? But you already know the answer. In a city where the only thing that trickles down faster than gossip is last night's supper. Someone has to keep the streets walkable. That someone is you, and tonight, as every night. You are the night soil man, outside. The night is cold, with that kind of damp that crawls up your sleeves and settles in your bones. You grab your pail well, technically, the city's pail, but it's yours by right of daily suffering and your trusty iron hook. The hook is for snagging heavy chamber pots out of windows, and, if you're being honest, for fending off the occasional alley rat with delusions of grandeur. You slide your battered lantern onto your belt, the thin flame inside guttering as if it, too, would rather stay home. The world beyond your door is utterly still, save for the distant slap of water on stone and the far-off mutter of a drunk still trying to find his way home. You step into the street, and the smell hits you like a bad memory. Imagine every damp sock, every forgotten hunk of cheese, every bucket of kitchen waste and chamber pot, disaster from 100 households, all brewed together in a noxious stew and left to ferment under the careful guidance of time, mildew, and regret. Now, take a deep breath. No, wait, don't. You already know better. You've mastered the art of shallow breathing through your mouth. But even that can't save you when a gust of wind brings the city's collective sins right to your nose. The cobblestones are slick, each step an exercise in trust. Trust in your boots, trust in your balance, and, most importantly, trust that you will avoid the worst puddles, though. To be honest, worst is relative. Is it last night's rain or something more creative? Best not to ask. You move through the alleyways like a shadow, your bucket swinging, your mind already mapping the route from memory. Each street has its regulars, the widow with the ginger cat and an aim as true as any archer, the blacksmith who never remembers to put out his pot until the last possible moment and always swears it's the wife's job, and the row of merchant houses where you swear the rich folks have dinner parties just to see how much you can carry. You listen. The city's heart beats in small, secret ways, the rattle of shutters, the creak of bed springs, a baby's cry muffled behind thick wooden doors. No one wants to see you, but everyone needs you. It's a strange sort of fame, the kind where you're recognized only by your smell and your shadow, and never invited to the feasts. If you were a poet, you'd call yourself the unsung guardian of sanitation. But tonight, as your boots slip on a patch of something suspiciously viscous, you're not feeling particularly poetic. The first job of the night is always the worst. You approach the old miller's house, duck beneath a crooked beam, and give a little whistle a warning, so no one accidentally empties a chamber pot onto your head again. A window creaks open, and a white hand appears, grasping a pot with all the ceremony of a coronation. You extend your hook, catch the handle, and careful, guide it down to the street. Sometimes the lid holds, sometimes gravity wins. Tonight, you're lucky. The pot thunks gently into your bucket, and you nod your thanks, though the window is already closing. Not even a good evening for the night soil man. You empty, dump, move on. It's a rhythm, almost a dance. If dances involve more splashing and less applause. The sky above you is a dull pewter, stars smothered by the city's own breath. The moon, a wan sliver, seems to mock your efforts. Somewhere a cat yowls, and you imagine it's cursing you in feline Latin. You chuckle, but the sound is swallowed by the mist on nights like this. Time loses meaning. The city's secrets spill out in your pile of notes, hastily burned and tossed. Trinkets dropped by careless hands. The occasional coin or wedding ring always returned, always with a sigh. You see the city as few ever will, intimate with its dirt, its darkness, its underbelly. You know whose household has been drinking, whose supper didn't agree with them, whose children are sick by the color and scent of what you carry. It's a strange sort of power, this knowledge, but you wouldn't wish it on anyone. You finish your route in silence, the only applause the distant, mocking echo of the bell. The sky hints at dawn, but you're not done yet, not until every pot is empty. Every bucket rinsed as best you can, and every secret returned to the earth outside the city walls. You trudge back through the empty streets, passing bakers just lighting their ovens, market stalls being set up by hands that will never know how much they owe to the night. You return home as the sun begins to stretch its lazy fingers over the rooftops. You shed your uniform, toss your boots in the corner, and let your aching bones settle into the straw once more. Tomorrow, the bell will ring again. And you'll answer, because in a city that never truly sleeps, someone has to keep the darkness at bay. A hush settles over your room. The city is waking, but for a moment, you are at peace. You might think that. After so many nights shuffling through these ancient streets, your nose would just give up, grow numb, surrender itself to fate and let the stench pass straight through to your soul. No more notice than a fly on a cow's back. But you'd be wrong. Each night, the city invents new flavors of foulness, a fresh bouquet of odors that would bring a tear to the eye of even the most hardened cheese merchant. You take your first real lungful as you step onto the thoroughfare. Instantly, your senses are assaulted by a tapestry of scents, rotting cabbage from yesterday's market, oily smoke from the tallow chandlers, stale beer seeping from under tavern doors, and threading through it all, as reliably as sunrise, the sour, nose-pinching signature of human waste. The city is sleeping, but its bowels are not, if anything. They're busier than ever, You pass under a flickering torch bracketed to a crumbling wall, its smoke twisting like some mischievous sprite. Above you, laundry lines hang limp, the clothes like surrender flags from people who have given up on ever smelling clean again. Somewhere close by, you hear a muffled cough a night guard, or maybe just a fellow insomniac, wishing for fresher air and a different profession. Let's not sugarcoat it. Medieval towns are not known for their pleasant ambiance. There are no polite little bins on every corner, no network of pipes humming industriously beneath your feet, no flush of running water to spirit troubles away. What you have instead is a patchwork city of breathing, belching beast of timber and stone and mud, stitched together with hope, necessity, and the stubborn refusal of its inhabitants to acknowledge the sheer filth they wade through every day. You take in the sight. Houses lean into the street as though gossiping with their neighbors, upper stories crowding out the moon. The roads below are little more than a mess of cobbles and ruts, where the occasional wagon wheel has ground last week's refuse into a permanent brown streak, here and there. A puddle gleams with oily colors, reflecting the torchlight in sickly rainbows. Don't get curious about the source of any puddle in this city. Curiosity is for people with stronger stomachs and fewer direct encounters with last night's supper. At street level, life continues whether people want it to or not. A cat darts across your path, tail held high, as if daring the city to try anything new. You see a few shapes moving behind shuttered windows, perhaps a merchant counting coins, or a mother soothing a colicky child, or someone else awake for reasons best not explored after midnight. The night is thick with sounds, the distant thump of a barrel rolling in a cellar, the slap of wet laundry as a washerwoman wrings it out just before sunrise, and, from the far end of the street, a shrill cackle that could be laughter or a warning. You know every shortcut, every alley with a distinctive personality. There's the one near the fishmongers, always suspiciously slick, as if the ground itself sweats at the memory of so many scales and bones. There's the lane behind the butcher, redolent of blood and sawdust, haunted by dogs with dreams of marrow. But the worst, always, is the stretch by the old tanner's yard. Here, the stench is so strong you can practically chew it, thick with the tang of lime, old leather, and the city's oldest, most pungent secrets, yet beneath the wall of stink. There's a rhythm to it all. The city breathes in and out, slow and deep. You almost get used to the symphony of odors, sharp, musty, sickly sweet, and acidic, blending in an endless cycle. And you, the humble night soil man, are both conductor and audience, forced to notice every variation, every crescendo, every unwelcome new note. Every so often, you pass a small heap of straw, artfully placed beneath a window. The wise ones do this, a little courtesy to catch the worst of it when chamber pots are emptied with more hope than aim. You step around these piles as if they're booby traps, because they are. The city council decreed, in a fit of wishful thinking, that all waste should be disposed of discreetly, by cover of night, and with due respect for the public health. Of course, that was before half the council moved to country estates. The only ones respecting public health tonight are you and your fellow nightwalkers. Everyone else is just hoping to sleep through the consequences. As you make your rounds, you start to notice the small details that mark the city's nocturnal personality. There's the candle burning in the window of the apothecary, flickering bravely against the damp. You hear the scratch of a quilsome clerk burning midnight oil, perhaps forging a new tax to make your life even less glamorous. On a stoop, a shoeless child curls up, arms wrapped around his knees, dreaming of bread, or maybe of somewhere the air doesn't taste like feet. A drunk staggers out of the tavern, muttering a blessing, or is it a curse as you pass? He waves a half-eaten pie in your direction, then thinks better of it and stumbles back inside, for a brief, shining moment. You wonder what it would be like to swap lives with him, careless, untethered, oblivious to the city's hidden machinery. But then you remember tomorrow. He'll step outside, wrinkle his nose, and curse the air. You'll already be finished, your shift complete, your nose numbed and your soul only slightly battered. Some streets are kinder than others. The lane by the baker's glows with a hint of sweetness, a whiff of rising bread that almost washes away the rest. For a second, you imagine you're in another world, One where people pay you in fresh loaves and honeyed rolls instead of dirty coins and quick, embarrassed glances, but the moment never lasts. 2 steps later, a gust of wind brings you back to reality. A fresh wave of stink rolling over you like a blanket knitted by a vengeful ancestor. You meet other workers on your Rutea rag picker, his sack bulging with the city's cast-offs, a lamplighter, tall and silent, tending to the few torches brave enough to stay lit through the night. You nod in solidarity, a fellowship of the underappreciated. There is a strange pride in it, knowing that the city relies on you even as it pretends you're invisible. By now, your hands are sticky, your eyes water from the smoke and the cold and everything else. You check your pail, already a quarter full, and sigh. The night is young, and the city's digestive system is far from finished with you. But you press on. It's not glamorous, it's not heroic, but it's necessary. You walk through the heart of a city that never really sleeps. It just stirs, grumbles, and stews in its own juices, waiting for someone like you to carry away its secrets. A hush falls. For just a moment, you pause, bucket in hand, and listen to the city breathe. You might imagine that, for all the misery of the job. At least you get to suit up like some medieval superhero. Maybe a leather apron that shines in the moonlight, a dashing hat pulled low, or even boots that were built to last longer than your last bar of soap. Sorry to disappoint, but your uniform is about as far from knightly armor as moldy cheese is from fine wine. In fact, if there's one thing more famous than the night soil man's stench, it's his attire, a patchwork testament to thrift, bad luck, and the relentless efforts of city fashion to pretend you don't exist. Tonight, as you're rifling through the sad heap of clothing piled by your bedside, you realize there are only 2 real criteria for your workwear. It must be ugly enough that no one else will steal it, and thick enough to buy you a few extra seconds before the worst of the city's filth seeps through to your skin. Forget velvet, forget linen, forget the snappy green hose you wore to your cousin's wedding. What you reach for is a threadbare tunic that's been every shade of brown, gray, and unidentifiable in between. You hesitate for a moment, sniff the armpit questionable, but passable. You slide it over your head, then comes the scarf. The scarf is legendary, at least in your own mind. It's not beautiful, unless ugly as a frog's bottom is a compliment where you come from. But it's thick, it's wide, and, most importantly, it wraps twice around your nose and mouth, forming a makeshift mask. At first, you thought it might actually filter the stink, but all it really does is trap your own breath, hot and faintly cabbagey, against your face. Still, it's better than nothing. You wouldn't trade it for a noble's coin. Next up, the boots. Oh, the boots. You've gone through more pairs than you care to count, each one dying a noble death in service to your cause. There's something poetic about it. If you squint, tonight's pair was rescued from a rubbish pile, patched and repatched until they look more like sculptures than shoes. The soles flap a bit when you walk, but as long as you keep your pace steady and avoid anything deeper than ankle height, they'll do, for now. Over everything goes your coat. Once, it might have been a decent cloak, the sort worn by a merchant's apprentice on a frosty morning. Now it's ragged at the hem, patched at the elbows, and stiff in places best not investigated. You sling it over your shoulders, tucking your scarf into the collar so only your eyes peer out red and a little watery, but alert as any city watchman's. The final touch gloves. If you're lucky, leather, if you can get them, but more often it's old wool, fraying at the fingertips, offering just enough barrier to keep your hands from looking like you bathed in stew. You check the seams, flex your fingers, ready as you'll ever be. You take a look at yourself in a cracked piece of mirror or a luxury item. Though nobody would ever guess by looking at your reflection, there's a strange pride in it. You look a bit like a highwayman, a bit like a scarecrow, and not at all like someone anyone would invite to dinner. But that's the point, isn't it? Your uniform is your shield, not against swords or arrows, but against the judgmental glances of polite society and the constant assault of what the city has to offer after dark. Sometimes, you wonder if your clothes remember every night as well as you do. Each patch tells a story. That tear at the hem from when you caught your coat on a loose nail behind the tannery and had to wriggle out of it before the resident dogs got curious. The big brown stain on the back. Best not to ask, though you remember slipping in the rain. Your dignity leaking out as quickly as the contents of your bucket. The weird puckering at the shoulder from when you tried to wash the coat in boiling water, convinced it would kill the smell. It didn't. Your uniform is a kind of camouflage. In the darkness, you are just another shadow among many. By the faint, flickering lamplight, you could be mistaken for a particularly grubby ghost. The only people who really see you are the other night workers, rag pickers, rat catchers, lamplighters, and the occasional thief who gives you a wide berth. As if crime has its own code of honor about who to rob. If you ever did show up in church on a Sunday, not that you'd be welcome. You imagine people would shift away from you in the pews, pretending not to notice as their eyes water from your perfume. Yet, there are advantages. No one mistakes you for a mark. No city guards give you trouble. You could walk into the finest square in town, and people would part like the Red Sea. All the better to keep their shoes dry. And when it's cold bone chilling, teeth rattling cold, you're many. Many layers keep you warmer than the skinniest merchant shivering in his imported finery. There's a practical wisdom in your wardrobe. 2. You've learned to line your sleeves with scraps of waxed cloth to keep the worst of the wet at bay. You double knot your boots with the stubbornness of a mule, knowing one loose lace could mean a very unpleasant night indeed. And your scarf, for all its failings, has saved you more times than you can count, not just from the smell, but from the sharp words of drunks and the curious stares of children who've never seen a real live night soil man before. On some nights, when the moon is high and the city seems less cruel, you catch your reflection in a puddle and almost laugh. You look like a character from a storybook, the villain, perhaps, or the tragic fool. But you know better. You're the backbone of this city. The quiet hero in rags and patches, the one who keeps the wheels turning while everyone else sleeps, safe and ignorant in their beds. So, you tug your coat a little tighter, adjust your scarf, and pick up your battered pail. The uniform may not be glamorous, but it's yours. It's your badge of honor, your armor against a world that would rather pretend you and your burdendant exist. And tonight, as every night, you march into battle, one squelching step at a time. A brief pause, a hush, as you stand at the threshold, dressed for the worst the city can throw at you. There's a certain romance twisted as a corkscrew, sure, but still a romance in the notion of a tradesman and his tools. Knights have swords handed down by legendary grandfathers, bakers, secret recipes that waft through generations, painters, brushes they love more than their own offspring. You have a battered pail, a bent iron hook, and a lantern with a soul as weary as your own. They may not be glamorous, but these humble companions are your lifeline, your shield, and your only real colleagues as you slip through the city's underbelly night after night. First, the pail. Oh, what a beauty. The city issues you one. But issue is a strong word. Most are rescued from a previous worker, patched with scrap wood and a prayer, their insides stained with the memories and more of 10,000 unfortunate evenings. Yours has a handle that groans in protest every time you lift it, and the wood is so swollen with old filth and river water that it feels almost soft, as if it's plotting to turn itself into compost and vanish from this world altogether. Sometimes you daydream about swapping your pail for a brand new one shining, sturdy, perhaps even fragrant with cedar and hope. But you know better. A new pail would simply attract attention. And in your line of work, invisibility is your most precious armor. The pail is heavier than you expect, always heavier. The longer the night drags on, the more your arms burn with the weight. It knocks against your leg as you walk, a constant, thudding reminder that no matter what anyone says, you're doing honest labor. Not honest in the way that earns you a place at the mayor's table, but honest enough to keep the city from drowning in its own secrets. Some nights, you pat the side of your pail like it's a faithful hound. Other nights, you curse it, threaten to toss it in the river and let the rats have their turn. Next comes the hook, if you were a hero. Your hook would have a story, a quest, a lost love. Maybe even a name like the Avenger. Instead, yours is just a length of iron, twisted at the end to form a crude question mark. Its purpose: to reach up and snag chamber pots from windowsills 2, 3, sometimes even 4 stories above the street, without getting a face full of last night's supper. If you've ever wondered why medieval architecture is so obsessed with overhanging windows, you now know it's not just for shade or to impress travelers, but to make your job as precarious and splash-prone as humanly possible. You cradle the hook in your hand, feeling the chill of the metal seep through your glove. The surface is notched and pitted, each nick a souvenir from a close call or a near miss, like the time Mrs. Hargrove dropped her pot just as you reached for it, or when you got tangled up in a trailing bedsheet and almost pulled the entire laundry down into the muck. It's an art, catching pots in the dark, balancing on uneven cobbles while keeping one eye on the window above and one eye on the suspicious noises from the shadows behind you. Sometimes, when you're feeling particularly philosophical, which isn't often, because philosophy tends to fade after the third bucket of the night, you marvel at how such a simple tool has so much power over your fate. The hook is your silent partner, your arm's extension, your last defense against disaster. You keep it sharp, you keep it close, and you never, ever let anyone else borrow it. Other workers might scoff at your loyalty, but you know change your hook and you change your luck. And nobody in this business can afford to tempt fate. Then there's your lantern, a thing so battered and smoky it could double as a relic from a saint's tomb. You light it with hands still numb from the cold, cupping the flame with your palm until it sputters into life. The glass is blackened from years of use, so the glow it casts is never more than a nervous shiver along the street. But that's just as well. You're not here to announce your presence to the world. You're here to see just enough to do your job and no more. The lantern's warm circle is your mobile sanctuary, the line between you and the wild dark where anything, from loose dogs to loose privies, could be waiting. Sometimes, you joke with yourself that the lantern has a personality. It's stubborn, sometimes fickle, and always a bit dim. If it ever decided to go on strike, you'd be in real trouble. There's an intimacy to the way you shield its flame against the wind, the way you angle it to inspect a particularly dodgy pile, the way it throws your shadow long and thin behind you as you pass from one house to the next. It's almost a companion, one that asks for little and offers just enough. Every now and then, you encounter another Night Soil Manor woman, though that's rare enough that you still remember her name, her laugh, the way she could heft a bucket with one hand while trading insults with the drunks. You nod. Exchange a few words about the pail's yours, leaking again. Only when it's raining, maybe even swap a tip about which block to avoid tonight. Your tools mark you as kin, as surely as any family crest or merchant's badge. And don't forget the rags. Not exactly tools, but essential all the same. You keep a few stuffed in your pocket, tied to your belt, tucked behind your ear. You use them to wipe your hands, your face, your boots, your pride. Some nights, when the wind changes and the smell is bad enough to make a dog cry, you'll tie a rag across your face, a last-ditch defense against the city's invisible enemies. The rag doesn't help much, but it gives you something to do with your hands when you need to wait for a window to open, or for a drunk to stumble past, or for a rival worker to move along. Your tools are simple, stubborn, and loyal. They don't complain, don't gossip, don't ask questions about your life or your choices. They just do what they're made to do. And if you treat them right, if you oil the hook, dry the pail, trim the wick, and fold the rags, you might just make it through another night without disaster. So, you stand at the end of the alley, pail on your hip, hook slung over your shoulder, lantern flickering at your side. You are armed, in your own strange way, ready to face whatever the city hurls from its windows tonight. You're not a knight, not a prince, not a hero, but with your trusty tools. You're the only thing standing between civilization and chaos, between comfort and catastrophe, between a city that can pretend to sleep easy and the creeping, unstoppable tide of filth, a hush, a breath. And for a fleeting moment, you feel almost proud. You'd think a chamber pot would be just a container, a simple, forgettable part of daily medieval life, like a wooden spoon or a battered mug. But, oh, you'd be wrong. Chamber pots are the city's true storytellers. the silent witnesses to every household's secrets, habits, and, let's be honest, occasional acts of desperation. As the night soil man, you become something of a chamber pot connoisseur, able to identify a household not by its front door or family crest, but by the shape, weight, and all too familiar contents of the vessel you empty each night. Your relationship with chamber pots starts at arm's length, literally, the first time you collected one. You held it away from your body as if it might suddenly develop teeth and bite you. With time, your arms grew stronger, your reflexes sharper, and your sense of smell Your sense of smell simply surrendered and walked out the city gate. Each pot is a little different. Some are sturdy earthenware, thick and honest. Others are fine porcelain, painted with scenes of flowers, birds, or ironically babbling brooks. You can't help but think the artisans who painted those pastoral scenes never imagined their art would end up in such ignoble service. Some pots are small, dainty things, used by children or prim old ladies who refuse to acknowledge the less glamorous necessities of life. Others are so large and heavy, you suspect they've been used by the entire household, possibly at the same time. The handles come in all shapes, twisted, looped, or just two holes that cut into your hand as you hoist them down from a windowsill. There are lids sometimes, chips, cracks repaired with lead or string, and that unmistakable glaze of use that never seems to wash out. No matter how many times you swish them with water from the communal pump, what's inside? Well, you stop asking after the first week. Sometimes it's exactly what you'd expect. Other times, the pot tells you a story the household would rather keep secret. A dinner that didn't sit well, a long night of ale at the tavern, a quiet illness nobody talks about. On occasion, you find little surprises, bones from last night's stew, a wilted flower, a piece of jewelry accidentally dropped in haste. You once found a frog, perfectly alive, glaring at you as if demanding to be returned to its rightful pond. You let it go in the rain barrel behind the apothecary, then spent the rest of the night imagining you'd curse the whole city. The ritual of the chamber pot is performed in every house, every night, as unremarkable as breathing, yet somehow charged with a kind of shameful secrecy. People don't look you in the eye when you come to collect them. Some wait until the last possible moment, flinging open the shutter and shoving the pot out into the night, as if hoping the darkness will disguise what's inside. Others leave them out early, tucked on a ledge or behind a shutter, the act of avoidance as clear as a bell. The children, though, sometimes peek from behind curtains, wide-eyed and curious, watching as you do your work. You tip your cap to them. Once, and one nearly fainted from surprise. You develop a system for the nightly rounds. The wealthy households are usually first eager to rid themselves of the night's burden before it can offend delicate noses. Their pots are heavy, painted, sometimes even gilded, though the contents never show any sign of refinement. Next come the merchant houses, where you might receive a nod, a grunted thanks, or if someone's feeling charitable, a heel of stale bread or a bit of cheese. The poorest homes are last, sometimes because they have the most to hide, sometimes because they simply can't afford to pay you to come more than once a week. You become something of a confidant, though no one would ever admit it. There are nights when you hear voices through the shutters, whispered arguments about money, sickness, or unfaithful spouses. Sometimes you catch a snatch of song, or laughter, or the quiet sob of someone who thinks the night is their only witness. The chamber pots carry all these stories, silent and heavy, passed from hand to hand in a ritual as old as the city itself. You learn to read the signs, the careful way a lid is placed to muffle sound, the hasty scrawl of chalk marking a pot, not for collection, usually a sign that someone's lost their dinner and their dignity in the same evening, the telltale aroma of strong herbs, an attempt to mask what cannot be disguised. Sometimes, you're given a tip, a copper penny or a wedge of hard sausage, in exchange for your silence about a particularly embarrassing night. You never gossip. The city's secrets are safe with you. Of course, accidents happen, pots are dropped, sometimes from high above. You've learned to dance a sidestep here, a quick backpedal there when a pot comes flying down too early, or when a drunken hand fumbles the pass. There was the time the mayor's wife emptied her pot without warning, showering you and half the street. You stood there, dripping, and the next morning, Found a fresh roll and a kind note waiting on your doorstep. Forgiveness, medieval style. You grow fond of certain pots, ridiculous as it sounds. There's one with a painted bluebird, chipped at the rim, that you've been collecting for years. There's another, shaped like a lion, from the apothecary's house. That always seems heavier than it should be. And there's the one from the baker's, glazed the color of sunrise, which smells faintly of cinnamon and yes, a rare and blessed relief. And there are the legends pots that are cursed, pots that have never been emptied, pots that have seen more of the city's drama than any noble or priest, sometimes. You imagine all the pots gathering in the market square at midnight, swapping stories about their owners, plotting a revolution. It's a foolish thought, but it makes the night pass quicker when all is said and done. You realize the city is a patchwork of lives, each one stitched together by 1,000 tiny rituals. The chamber pot is just one thread, but it's a strong one, a constant reminder that no matter how rich or poor, how proud or humble, everyone faces the same simple facts of existence. And you're the caretaker of that truth, the one who carries it away so the city can wake to a new day, fresh and forgetful. The last pot is emptied, the lid replaced. You close your eyes, breathing in a rare moment of stillness for a heartbeat. The city is silent, and you are the keeper of all its secret lives. The city at night is not the city you see in the daylight. In daylight, the market square bustles, the guild banners flutter, and children chase each other through tangled feet and clattering carts, never thinking once of the dirt beneath their shoes. But at night, under the uncertain gaze of the moon, the city shrinks back, its edges softened, its secrets ready to seep into the shadows, much like, you think ruefully, everything else you're expected to collect. You step out from the stoop of another silent house, pail creaking, boots leaving damp prints in the half-dried mud. Overhead, the moon is a thin, uncertain coin bright enough to tease your path, but not enough to reveal every lurking danger. There's a hush to the streets, a sort of reluctant peace. You feel it on your skin, the cool brush of mist rising from the river, the sticky, oily tang of torch smoke wafting from a distant watchman's post. Every surface gleams, sometimes with honest dew, sometimes with things less poetic, best not to ponder. Your lantern throws a meager halo as you move, the flame flinching and shrinking with every errant gust. In the distance, you catch the rattle of wheels, the last delivery cart of the night, or maybe some late merchant running from debts or trouble or an angry wife. Beyond that, the city breathes in the deep, measured way of a sleeper who dreams uneasy dreams. You, though, are very much awake. If the daytime city belongs to the lords and merchants, at night it is yours and yours alone, the city of shadows, of echoes, of whispered names and muffled laughter behind shuttered windows. You pass the fountain in the square, dry for weeks, its marble figures crusted with grime and the sad efforts of children who toss pebbles and hope for magic. It is strangely beautiful by moonlight, thaw the cracks and stains fading to memory, the stone almost silver. You stop for a moment, letting your breath fog in the air. Some distant part of you wants to sit on the fountain's edge, to rest and let the silence soak into your bones. But the pail at your side, heavy and insistent, reminds you there are still streets to walk, still shadows to chase. You know the patterns of the city by heart, where the alleyways narrow so tight you can brush both walls with outstretched hands, where the stones sink underfoot, eager to trip up the unwary, where the roofs pitch so close above that if you listen, you can hear the private murmurs of people in their beds. Every shortcut is a risk, but every wide street is a stage, lit by the moon and open to any wandering eye. So you slip from shadow to shadow, feet silent on the uneven stones, letting the dark hide you from prying glances and, sometimes more urgently, from the chance of something being flung from above. There is a discipline to the night. You move quietly, no wasted steps, eyes darting to every doorway, every glimmer of movement at the edge of vision. Sometimes it's just a rat, fat and unafraid, pausing to wash its paws before disappearing into a crack. Other times, it's a rival worker, face hidden, passing with a nod that says, "We're all in this together, but keep out of my way." once or twice. It's something more unsettling, a shape that melts into a doorway, a whisper of feet that seem to echo your own, a cold prickle at the back of your neck that has nothing to do with the breeze. You tell yourself stories to chase away the worry. Maybe it's just a watchman, maybe a baker with an urgent delivery, maybe nothing at all. But you keep your lantern high and your hook ready all the same. Sometimes, on the quietest streets, you hear music, not the stately sort played at feasts, but the thin, secret music of the city itself, a dog barking 3 lanes away. The drip, drip, drip of water from a broken gutter, the distant tinkle of a wind chime left out on a windowsill. You try to walk in rhythm, letting the sound lead you onward, guiding your feet as you move from house to house, shadow to shadow, each step drawing you deeper into the secret life of the city. There are dangers, of course, and not just the obvious kind. You learn to avoid certain corners where the drunks gather, rowdy and quick to scorn anyone they consider beneath them, which is just about everyone after the 3rd mug of ale. You steer clear of the city wall, where the dogs roam free and the night is thick with the scent of old battles and older grudges. And you never linger beneath a window too long, especially when the wind shifts and you hear the telltale scrape of a pot being set down. Reflexes save lives, and dignity. But there are moments of strange beauty too, only visible when the rest of the world is sleeping. The moonlight slides like quicksilver across the rooftops, gilding even the most battered thatch in soft radiance. Ivy glimmers on the garden wall, its leaves ghostly green in the distance. The old cathedral looms, its tower rising like a finger pointed at the sky. And you imagine the bell inside, silent for now, but always ready to call the city back to itself. A cat, sleek and sure, walks the ridgepole above you, pausing just long enough to give you a look that says, "I see you, fellow wanderer." You find yourself humming as you work, an old tune from childhood, half remembered and made strange by the night. It comforts you, this small rebellion and a song to remind the darkness that it doesn't own you entirely. Sometimes you whisper to the city itself, as if the stones can hear. "It's just you and me tonight," you murmur. "Let's try not to trip over each other." In the rare intervals between rounds, you lean against a wall and rest, lantern held close. You watch the sky, clouds chasing across the face of the moon, and feel a sense of kinship with the other souls. Out here in the deep hours, the lamplighter adjusting a wick, the rag picker searching for treasure in someone else's trash, the guardsman stamping his feet against the cold, the stray dog who stops to sniff your boots before trotting on. In these moments, the city is a single organism, and you, for better or worse, are its pulse. There's a freedom in the night, too, for all its hazards. No one's watching you, no one's judging your patched coat or the way you rub your aching arm after hoisting a heavy pot. The rich and powerful are snoring behind thick walls, and the only ones left are the ones who understand that survival is a team sport. Even if the team is silent and scattered, as you make your way to the next house, you pause, listening. The city is never truly silent, but for a breath. It comes close. The moon glows overhead, cool and unbothered. Your own shadow stretches before you, thin, elongated, dancing on the stones. A hush, a moment's peace, and the world seems to hold its breath. It is said the human nose can get used to anything if you give it enough time. That, you think, is a statement made by someone who has never in their life been downwind of a medieval city at 2 a.m, with a full pail of misery sloshing at their hip for the night soil man. The world is a tapestry of scents, most of them memorably awful. And even when you think you've built up an ironclad resistance, there's always a new surprise, like a punch to the face with a particularly ripe cabbage. You might have hoped, in your younger days, that the nose simply gives up, that the brain, merciful organ that it is, would just turn off the olfactory signals after a certain threshold and let you float through your nights in blissful numbness. Sadly, no, instead. Your nose seems to grow ever more talented at discerning subtle varieties of stink. It's a dark art. This you can now tell the difference between last week's marketed fish, the stable's droppings, a hint of tanner's lye, and, of course, the fresh bouquet of human waste that is your nightly companion. If this were a talent contest, you'd sweep the board, you'd win gold, silver, and bronze, and no one would ever want to sit next to you at the celebration feast. Tonight is no different. The air is thick, almost chewy. If you're being honest, you breathe through your mouth, scarf pulled tight over your nose. But it doesn't matter. The stink is in the air, in your clothes, in your very pores. Sometimes you suspect it's in your bones. A permanent, invisible tattoo marking you as the city's silent servant. Even the cleanest, coldest nights carry a bass note of refuse, like a sour chord beneath every other sound. There are levels to the smell. At first, there's the raw, almost herbal note vegetable scraps, rotting hay, crushed grass underfoot. Next, the tang of smoke and old grease from the cook shops. Then, as you make your rounds, the true stars arrive sharp, pungent, unmistakable. Chamber pots upended, alley drains bubbling, the wind shifting just enough to bring you a reminder that no matter how much you wish otherwise, your work is always waiting, your hands. Despite gloves and rags and the occasional attempt at soap, have a smell all their own. It's a smell that clings, no matter how many times you rinse them in the horse trough or splash them with vinegar. There was a time you cared, scrubbing until your skin turned raw. But all you achieved was red hands and the grudging respect of the local apothecary, who declared you the cleanest filth carrier in town. You still think about that. What a title. Maybe you should have it carved on your gravestone one day. Clothes fare no better. Each layer is a record of nights past, stains you stopped trying to explain, patches you sewed not for pride, but for the simple hope of an extra barrier. The scarf at your neck, once a soft blue, now an indeterminate gray. A testament to both your practicality and your surrender. Sometimes, in the quietest hours, you find yourself dreaming of clean linen crisp, white, the kind that snaps in the breeze and smells of sun. Then you wake to the reality of woolen leather, stiff with the memories of every alley and gutter you've crossed. The smell is democratic. At least, it doesn't care about your station or your coin purse. It seeps under doorways, curls up the stairs, and settles on tapestries as easily as it does on your patched coat. You've seen the city's finest ladies pinch their noses when a cart goes by, and you've watched the lords frown as they step from their carriages into the morning air, wondering who's to blame for the state of things. It's a secret you and your fellow workers share. Everyone is to blame, and everyone suffers equally except that. For you, suffering is a full-body, full-time affair. Sometimes, you take comfort in the small ways people fight back. Bundles of herbs hung in windows, sprigs of rosemary tucked behind earthenware pots, little bags of lavender hidden in pockets. The baker's wife throws salt on her doorstep, muttering that it keeps the bad spirits and bad smells at bay. You don't have the heart to tell her that salt only works on ghosts, not on the ghosts of last week's stew. For your own part, you've tried every trick. Chewing mint leaves ineffective, holding your breath impractical. Breathing through a wet rag just makes you damp and smelly. And, once, plugging your nostrils with breadcrumbs. That last one led to a rat-related incident you'd rather not recall. What's worse is how the smell follows you home, no matter how careful you are, how you try to change in the yard, how you wash with lye and cold water until your fingers go numb. It seeps into your walls, your mattress, your dreams. It's the one gift of the night soil man that never gets lost on the way. Your neighbors know it. The landlord knows it. He gave up trying to rent the room next to yours, and now just stores turnips there, claiming they keep longer in company. The city cats know it. They sniff your boots and then think better of making friends. The children, at least, are honest about it. They hold their noses and laugh, shouting, "There he goes," as you pass by, then run squealing from the imagined cloud that trails in your wake. You used to mind, but now you wave, sometimes pulling a face or pretending to chase them, playing the monster just for a moment. Let them laugh, they'll understand, one day, that every city needs someone to do the dirty work. And yet, there's the strangest part. The city is also alive with other smells, some almost beautiful. If you pause, really pause, you can pick them out from the chorus of stink, the faint sweetness of apples ripening in the market, the rich, smoky bite of peat fires, the sudden whiff of soap from a washerwoman's bucket. Sometimes, you even smell rain coming before the first drop hits, or the green, sharp scent of crushed nettles after a storm. In those rare moments, you remember that the world is not just filth and fatigue, it's layers upon layers, and you're simply attuned to more of them than most. There's a kind of dignity and endurance, you tell yourself, in carrying the stink so others can wake to fresh air and start their day without a thought for the work you've done. When someone does thank you raw, but it happens, it almost makes you forget your hands, your clothes, your hair, your bed. Will all need scrubbing in the morning. Almost. But for now. The night goes on. The smell clings to everything, your tools, your shadow, even your stories. And yet, with every pail you haul and every alley you cross, you carve out your place in the city's tapestry, the unseen thread that holds it all together. One breath at a time. A pause, a quiet moment beneath the stars, as the air shifts and you brace yourself for the next round. If you ever believed a night soil man walked his route alone, the city itself would quickly disabuse you of that notion. Oh, the streets are quieter than at noon. Gone is the raucous laughter of merchants, the screeching haggling over onions or geese, but the city, for all its shadows, is never truly empty. It teems with lives like a stew pot with too many vegetables, and you, bucket in hand, are destined to bump elbows with every flavor. Let's start with the windows. The windows are never truly closed. There's always one half cracked, just enough for an eye or two to peek down as you pass below. You hear the faint shuffle of feet, a creak of the shutter, sometimes a muffled laugh, or, more commonly, the barely audible prayer that tonight you won't splash. In the fine houses, lace curtains twitch. Someone's granny, wrapped in wool and judgment, holds her breath as you approach. In the cramped tenements, faces cluster together, children wide-eyed, mothers frowning, fathers snoring on stools nearby. You learn to spot them even when you don't look up the hush of voices, the slight movement in the candlelight, the unmistakable feeling of being watched by people who'd never admit to watching you. And yet, when you lift your eyes, the city's gaze flickers away, a universal choreography. As old as dirt and shame, I see you. I need you. But let's both pretend this isn't happening. Sometimes a window slams shut with a violence that feels like an accusation. Sometimes there's a hurried wave, a pot thrust out. The transaction is fast and silent as a back alley bribe. The richer the house, the quieter the handoff. They have reputations to protect. After all, nothing must sully the myth that their waste is somehow more refined than that of the fishmonger or the apprentice down the lane. But out here, in the open, you can't help but cross paths with the city's other creatures of the night. There are the drunks. Of course, their boots stumbling over uneven cobbles, their voices rising and falling in the kind of song that might have been bawdy if they could remember all the words. They are the bravest, or the most oblivious, waving at you with the cheer of someone who won't remember in the morning. Sometimes one stumbles close, grins gap-toothed, and tries to trade you a story for a swig of your thankfully empty pail. You steer clear, knowing that nothing good comes of drunks with strong arms and no sense of dignity. Still, you remember the time a baker's apprentice offered you half a pie for a shortcut through the alley. Best pie you ever tasted, even if it reeked faintly of onions and regret. Then there are the other workers, the rag pickers, who sort through the city's cast-offs with hands quick as ferrets, the lamplighters, solemn and silent, moving from torch to torch, spreading their small circle of order in the chaos. The street sweepers, who nod in passing as if you're all part of a secret society no one else would want to join. Sometimes you meet the rat catcher, his grim sack squirming with his latest harvest. And you trade jokes, dark, crude, but funny enough to make the night pass quicker. There's a kind of camaraderie among those who labor when the city sleeps. You all know you're invisible by daylight, all know the cold comfort of a job no one thanks you for unless you stop doing it. But not every encounter is with a fellow soul of the shadows. Some nights, a patrol of city guards tramps by, their armor clanking, their faces bored and sullen. They nod to you if they're in a good mood. If not, they scowl and step around your bucket as if your very presence is a personal affront. Sometimes a noble's carriage rattles through. the driver urging his horses to speed up as you pass, and if you're lucky, all you get is a dirty look. Once, a lordling's daughter leaned out the window, face pale as milk, and asked, "Does it bother you? The smell." You answered her honestly. Only when it's new, she didn't know what to make of that and vanished, like a ghost, into her silks and her worries about tomorrow's ball. There are nights you become a confessor. An old woman hands you her chamber pot with a sigh and a story. Her back is aching, her son's off at sea, her neighbor keeps stealing her turnips. You nod, make the right noises, and for a moment, you're not just the night soil man, you're the only one in the city who listens. Another time, a boy no older than 12 brings you his household's pot, eyes big and scared. Mother says thank you, he whispers, and scampers away before you can reply. That's all right. Sometimes gratitude is best delivered from a safe distance. You meet the fearful, the superstitious, the proud. There's the tailor who sprinkles salt in his pot and mutters charms, certain that a night soil man can curse a household for a missed payment. There's the innkeeper who leaves out a crust of bread and a coin every third night, just in case you're the kind of man who makes trouble for those who slight him. There's the midwife, always awake, always busy, who gives you a nod of deep understanding and never asks for more than a wave. Then there are those who pretend you don't exist at all. The young ladies in their fine gowns, the guild masters with noses high enough to scrape the beams, the priests on their midnight rounds. They pass you by as if you're smoke or mist, not flesh and blood, as if your work is done by invisible hands. You've learned to be invisible too, to move quietly, eyes down, letting their silence pass over you like rain. Sometimes, though, you catch a different sort of gaze, the look from a boy who wonders what it's like to have a job nobody wants, the look from a girl who thinks she might be braver than you, if only someone would give her a pail. The look from a mother who, just for a heartbeat, sees you not as a walking stink, but as a person, working while she sleeps. Those looks are rare, but they keep you warm longer than the baker's best bread. You learn to tell 100 stories just from the way a pot is handed over. A quick, careless toss. Someone who's late for bed or doesn't care what you think. A gentle lowering, hands trembling, someone who is ashamed or new to the city, or too proud for this business. A pot set out hours early, left alone in the moonlight, someone who hopes you'll be gone before they have to see you. And sometimes, there are nights when no one is watching, no one is awake, and you feel for a moment like the city is all yours, a secret realm, where every pot, every window, every shadow belongs only to you. But that never lasts. Someone always wakes, always glances out, always remembers, with a shudder or a sigh, that you were there, doing what needs to be done. So you walk on, boots sticky, pails swinging, moving through a city that both needs you and wishes it could forget you. The people you meet are everywhere and nowhere, present in every window and every closed door, watching with eyes that pretend not to see, listening with ears that will never admit to hearing your footsteps. A hush. Then, as you round the corner and vanish once again into the patchwork of night and shadow, payday. The word sounds grand solid as a castle gate, golden as a king's ransom. You'd imagine, perhaps, a line of grateful townsfolk clutching shiny coins, pressing them into your gloved palm as thanks for your midnight heroics. You'd imagine feasts, or at least a free pint at the tavern. Laughter and the warm glow of a job well done. And then you remember you're the night soil man in this city. Payday is a more complicated beast. Less loyal mastiff, more mangy cats, sometimes generous, sometimes sly, occasionally scratching when you least expect it. Let's not pretend most people would rather toss their pennies out the window than face you at their door. It's not personal well. Actually, it is personal, but only in the way that smells are personal, and your work is an olfactory symphony most would rather avoid. So, you've learned to accept your wages in all the city's flavors, sometimes a copper or two dropped in a chipped cup, sometimes a crust of bread, sometimes a muttered blessing, or depending on the mood, a muttered curse. If you're lucky, the coins are real and not just cleverly disguised buttons or the kind of tokens merchants give to keep beggars moving along. You have a system, of course, After years in the trade, you know which doors pay promptly, which pay late, and which pay only after a loud reminder delivered, perhaps, by you lingering just a little too long outside their window. Bucket in hand, eyes pointedly on the prize, you keep a list in your head. Not on paper is too dear for the likes of you. And besides, the fewer written records, the better for everyone. There are houses where the coins appear on the stoop, wrapped in oily cloth or tucked beneath a loose stone, as if they might sprout legs and wander away if left exposed to the night air. Others are more creative, hiding payment in hollow bricks, or slipping it into the folds of a laundry basket left by accident on the back steps. There's the widow Durham, who never misses a week, always has a penny and a word of advice: mind your back. Dearie, the city council's got a new law about buckets. You nod, pocket the coin, and try to remember if she's the one who put nettles in her pot last month for the spirits, she claimed. Though your skin remembers otherwise, the baker, on the other hand, pays in loaves, sometimes fresh, sometimes a little too crusty, but always with a nod that says, "We're in this together." You once tried to refuse, thinking your waistline was proof enough of your loyalty, but he just laughed and slipped an extra bun into your pail anyway. "For luck," he said. You ate it with hands still sticky from the night's work, the taste of cinnamon almost enough to make you forget the rest. But not every payday is so gentle. Sometimes the coins come with warnings if the smell's worse next week. You'll have words with your boss, as if you have a boss, as if the filth listens to orders. Sometimes they come with threats hissed from behind a shutter, wrapped in superstition and fear. "Don't cross my threshold on All Hallows Eve, or the spirits will follow you home." You don't believe in curses well, not most nights. Still, you make sure to carry a sprig of rosemary in your coat, just in case. There's always someone in the city who thinks your work invites the wrong kind of attention from the other side. There are houses, too, that never pay at all. The rich ones, mostly. Confident that their social standing is payment enough. Or the desperate, counting every farthing and pretending not to see you at the gate. With the rich, you play the game stand a little straighter, empty the pot with a flourish, and hope they remember your face next time someone complains about the unpleasantness near the square. With the poor, you take what's offered: a heel of cheese, a kind word, a silent nod. There's no profit in shaming someone whose life is already a long list of debts. Some nights, you wonder which is worse, the stink of poverty or the stink of pride. You hear stories, too, of other cities where the night soil men are paid handsomely, wear fine boots, and dine with the aldermen. You laugh, knowing such tales are as real as the goose that laid the golden egg. Here, the city pays you just enough to keep you coming back, never enough to let you walk away. You once tried to strike for higher wages, 3 of you, standing tall outside the mayor's house at sunrise, pails held like banners. He listened politely, promised to consider your plight. And the next night, you found your route doubled, your pay halved, and your name the punchline of every tavern joke for a fortnight. Lesson learned in this city: you take what you can get and keep your head down. Every coin has a story. Some feel heavy in your palm, fresh minted, clean, shining in the lantern light. Others are worn thin, edges smooth, marked by 1,000 hands before yours. Once, you found a Roman denarius at the bottom of your bucket, green with age. You kept it for luck, though you suspect it's cursed. Since then, your boots wear out twice as fast and cats avoid your shadow. Still, you carry it. Every trade has its superstitions. On rare, golden nights, someone thanks you, not just a mumbled word, but a real, honest thank you. Eyes meeting yours, gratitude plain as day. Those nights, you feel almost like the hero in some other story. You spend those coins quickly, as if afraid the luck might fade if you hold on to them too long. Of course, there's the other kind of payment. To the curses, the whispers, the city's endless talent for blaming you when the air turns sour or the rain floods the drains. Must be the night soil man's fault, they mutter, as if you control the tides and the wind. You shrug, pocket your coins, and remind yourself that every job comes with its hazards. If curses worked, you'd have turned into a frog a dozen times over by now. So, you count your coins at the end of the night, squatting on a cold stone step, lantern flickering at your feet. Some nights, your purse is heavier, other nights, the only weight you feel is in your bones. Still, You keep moving, keep working, keep taking what the city gives: coins, curses, and the occasional kindness. You rise, tuck your wages away, and sling your pail over your shoulder. Tomorrow will be the same, and the day after, and the day after that. In this city, payday is just another night, and you are just another shadow passing through. A hush, the quiet chime of coins in your pocket, and you step back into the waiting dark. Let's be honest. If there's one certainty in the life of a night soil man, it's that accidents will happen. Not "oh dear, I spilled my tea" accidents. Not even "whoops, the goat's eaten my washing" accidents. No, these are the kinds of accidents that haunt your dreams, leave stains on your boots, and have you scrubbing under your fingernails with a stick until the sun comes up. In a city built on secrets, awkward silences, and far too many chamber pots, things will go wrong, and everyone, from the mayor to the lowliest mouse, will do their best to pretend nothing happened at all. It usually starts with a noise. Sometimes it's the unmistakable clatter of a pot dropped from a window ceramic on stone, echoing down the alley like the world's most undignified bell. Other times, it's the splosh of contents hitting cobblestone, or, on particularly unlucky nights, something softer. You've trained yourself to react fast, but no one's reflexes are perfect. The moment you hear that fateful sound, your whole body tenses, shoulders up, feet dancing, arms flung wide in the hope you'll escape with nothing worse than a new stain. It's a cruel fact of physics that the higher the window, the more spectacular the disaster. A well-timed warning from a friendly housewife. Heads up. Deer can save you. But more often than not, the pots arrive with no preamble, launched by hands too tired, tipsy, or simply distracted to care what's lurking below. You've learned to keep your wits about you, to listen for the scrape of pottery, the shift of floorboards, the telltale curse when someone realizes they've missed the pail again. Sometimes you manage a sidestep, a quick dodge, a narrow escape. Other times, you're not so lucky. You remember your first big accident. Everyone in this line of work does. For you, it was a winter's night so cold your breath froze in the air, and even the rats wore jackets. You just started your route, nerves jangling, eager to impress the older workers. You heard the warning, a heartbeat too late, a shout, a thud, and then you were drenched from head to boots, shivering, the victim of a chamber pot emptied with more enthusiasm than aim. The entire street erupted in laughter, and you tried to laugh too. But there's only so much dignity a person can muster with yesterday's supper dripping down the back of their neck from that night on. You kept your scarf wrapped tight, your eyes sharp, and your pride stored somewhere safer. But pride is slippery, and the city is full of surprises. There's the time you tripped on a loose cobblestone, your boot caught, your pail swung wide, and before you knew it, you'd created a splash zone worthy of a medieval festival. You stood there, ankle deep in the evidence, and a cat watched from a windowsill with all the disdain in the world. Or the night the handle on your bucket finally gave out, dumping the entire load across the doorstep of the guildmaster's house. The next day, someone chalked a drawing of you bucket in hand, stink lines radiating in the city wall. You could have been angry, but the artistry was so good you almost felt honored. And then, there are the times you wish you could forget. The time you lost your grip on a particularly heavy pot and it shattered, contents spraying in all directions, including up your sleeve. The night you leaned too close to a shutter, hoping to hear a whispered all clear, and were rewarded with a face full of well. You get the idea. These are the moments when even the city tries to hide its laughter, shutters slamming shut, voices stifled, the sudden hush of neighbors deciding, in perfect unison, that they have always been asleep. No one wants to talk about accidents. Of course, the very next morning, the streets are scrubbed, the walls repainted, and the housewives busy with their brooms. The mayor's clerk, who nearly lost his boots in your puddle, will simply step a little wider, never mention it again, and glare at you as if you planned the whole thing for sport. If you meet someone's eye, they look away, quickly, guiltily, as if you've both signed a secret pact to forget. Children, on the other hand, are honest. They chase after you, shrieking with laughter, daring each other to jump the puddles you leave behind. Look. Ma. The stinky man's done it again. You tip your hat and let them have their fun. One day, they'll have jobs just as messy, maybe not with buckets, but with other people's problems all the same. Occasionally, a kind soul offers help, a rag tossed down, a cup of water from a window, a rare word of sympathy. You accept it with a grateful nod, though you know as well as they do that tomorrow, everything will return to the way it was. That's the city's way. Accidents are fleeting, embarrassment is momentary, and dignity is whatever you can scrape together before dawn. Sometimes you're blamed for accidents that aren't your fault at all. If the wind changes, if the streets flood, if a horse slips or a merchant's cart overturns, somehow, it circles back to you. The night soil man must have been careless again. They mutter, as if you alone hold the city's balance in your hands. You try not to take it personally. After all, if people stopped blaming you, they might have to look at the mess they leave behind themselves. But through it all, you learn. You learn which windows to watch, which doors to avoid, which streets are more trap than thoroughfare. You learn to walk with your weight balanced, your pail steady, your senses on high alert. You develop a sixth sense for danger when the air goes still, when the laughter fades, when even the dogs are quiet. That's when you know to move quickly, head down, and hope for the best. Sometimes, you laugh about it with other workers, stories traded in the pre-dawn gloom, each one outdoing the last, who was splashed, who slipped, who wore the stink all the way to Sunday. There's a comfort in the laughter, a reminder that no one escapes unscathed. You share tip show to clean boots with sand, how to mask a smell with vinegar, how to wash your pride and wear it again tomorrow. At the end of each night, you strip off your coat, your scarf, your gloves, you scrub your hands raw, shake out your boots, and hope you've left the worst of it behind. But the city always remembers, even if it pretends not to. Somewhere, on a stoop or a windowsill, there's a fresh stain, a silent witness to the night's chaos, waiting for the sun to dry it and the day to forget. So, you walk on, a little more cautious, a little more humble, knowing that accidents are part of the price you pay for being the one who faces what everyone else pretends isn't there. The city returns to silence, accidents and all, and you carry on one step, one spill, one night at a time. A hush settles over the cobbles, and you pause to breathe, ready for whatever comes next. The city is not just a maze of houses and alleys and markets. It's a walled world, a fortress built to keep trouble out, or, depending on the night, to keep the stink in. Every city gate is a threshold between chaos and countryside, stone and soil, and as a night soil man, you know them all by heart. You know the chipped stones worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, the iron hinges shrieking like banshees if you arrive too early, the guards asleep on their feet with faces pinched by dreams or just the cold. Tonight, the air by the main gate is sharper than a baker's knife. There's a hush, a waiting, as if the city itself is holding its breath until you pass by. Your bucket is heavy, always heavy by this point, a sloshing, slopping. Humbling reminder that most of your work is meant to leave, to vanish, to be forgotten by sunrise. The streets behind you are quieter now. The last of the drunks have staggered home, and even the cats have curled into shadowy balls under rain barrels. Only you and your fellow nightwalkers remain, headed for the place where waste goes to die. You approach the gates, boots squelching through mud that's been seasoned by centuries of well. Everything. The guards know you. They give a sleepy nod, noses wrinkling, hands tucked into their coats as if you might pass your perfume by touch. "Evenin'ger lad," one mutters, not meeting your eye. Sometimes, if they're feeling generous or bored, they'll make a joke, bringing out the city's finest again. Are you? But mostly, they just want you through and gone, so the wind can carry the smell far, far away, beyond the wall. The road dips and twists, flanked by stubbly fields and dark, whispering hedges. It's colder out here, air fresher, and for a moment you almost feel clean, like you've stepped into a world untouched by pots and pails and sticky boots. But your burden is real, sloshing and shifting with every step. And so, you follow the path you know by heart, a little trail of misery worn into the earth by generations before you. There's a spot just past the old willow, where the road dips and a little stream sings through the grass. This is the place. Some call it the dunghill, others the nightman's meadow. But you think of it as the city's unmarked grave, the final resting place for everything people would rather pretend never existed. Here, the air is thick, heavy with a smell that's almost a character in its own right, ancient, layered, a mingling of rot and rain and time itself. It's a smell that clings to the roots of the grass, the bark of the trees, the stones you sit on when you need a break and don't care if you ever stand up again. This is where you tip your bucket, pouring out the city's secrets for the earth to swallow. You do it with a practiced flick, one hand steadying the rim, the other bracing your back. Some nights, you work alone, the only witness a startled owl or the occasional fox slinking by. Other nights, there's a line of you night soil, men and women, each with their own burden, trading jokes or curses or just silence as you go about your business. There's a camaraderie here, a sense that, for all the city's pretense, someone must carry its weight, and tonight, that someone is you. The ground squelches underfoot, soft and forgiving. In summer, wildflowers bloom at the edge, brave little things defying the odds. You've seen daisies and poppies and even a few sunflowers turning their faces toward the sunrise, as if to say, well, take what you give and make it beautiful. You try to take comfort in that. Maybe. You tell yourself, something good grows from all this toil. Maybe, of course, the dunghill is not without its dangers. There's the mud, deep and sucking, eager to claim a boot or a pail or, on unlucky nights, both. There's the smell, thick enough to chase away even the boldest stray dogs. And there's the ever-present threat of the night, watch not the guards, but the real city scavengers, foxes, rats, and once, memorably, a wild-eyed pig that chased you all the way back to the gates, squealing as if to say, you keep your city filth, ill keep my freedom. You still have a scar on your shin as a reminder, and an abiding respect for farm animals. Sometimes you think about where it all goes. After you've emptied your load, the council claims it helps the fields, enriches the soil, turns the city's leavings into next season's harvest. You hope that's true, though you're not sure you want to eat the proof, more often. You think about the stories you're dumping out, love letters torn up in anger, a necklace lost in haste, the evidence of last night's feast or yesterday's heartbreak. Out here, in the fields, all those stories mixed together, a river of secrets washed away by the first good rain. When your bucket is finally empty, you take a moment, breathe well, as much as you dare stretch your back. Let the night air wrap around you. Sometimes you sit for a while, staring up at the stars, out here, away from the city's noise and smell. The sky is bigger, deeper, the stars closer. You count them, the way you counted your steps as a child, and try to remember that you were part of something larger than the burden you carry. You talk to yourself, sometimes, as you walk back through the fields, pale swinging light and empty at your side. That's another night done. You murmur, another debt paid. The wind in the grass sounds like an answer, gentle and low. You think about the people sleeping behind the city walls, safe, clean, oblivious, and wonder if any of them ever think about you, about this work, about the place where waste goes to die and the wildflowers grow strong, back at the gate. The guards barely glance at you now. You slip inside, lighter, almost invisible. Your work finished for the night. The city is quieter still. The last hours before dawn stretching out in pale, silent threads. Your boots are caked with mud, your arms ache, and your eyes sting from the cold. But you keep moving. There are still things to do, tools to clean, coins to count, hands to wash raw butt out here. On the threshold of city and countryside, you let yourself pause. A hush falls over the empty road, the city's heartbeat slowed. For a fleeting moment, you are just another soul under the stars, free of your burden, if only until the next night. You'd think that the job of night soil man, with its questionable glamour and aroma that precedes you like a herald, would be so wretched that no one else would bother fighting for it. But the truth is, where there's filth, there's money, or at least the barest whiff of it, and where there's money, there's always someone lurking in the shadows, scheming for a bigger share. The city after dark isn't just a place of empty streets and silent windows. It's a battlefield, a chessboard of territory, old grudges, whispered deals, and turf wars waged not with swords, but with buckets and boots. You first learn this the hard way, as everyone does. Maybe it's the night you show up to your usual route and find the windows already empty, the pots collected and not a copper left behind. Maybe it's the bruised look on your arm after a friendly collision in a narrow alley. Maybe it's the cold, hard stare from another worker as you approach the crossroads. Their pale swinging with the possessiveness of a guard dog. No matter how it comes, the message is always the same. This patch of city is not yours. Not tonight, most nights. There's an uneasy truce. The city's big enough, the filth never ending. And there's an unspoken code among the regulars: respect another's route. Don't poach clients. Keep your hands and your insults to yourself. But every now and then, the old rules crack, usually when someone's sick, or drunk, or desperate for extra coin. Then it's every night soil man for himself. Alliances shifting like shadows. Accusations flying faster than chamber pots from a third-story window. You learn to watch for the signs. The mark of chalk on a door, someone else's territory. The too quick disappearance of pots from a block you usually service. The sudden, inexplicable rise in tips or curses in your bucket. A sure sign that a rival has been spreading rumors behind your back. He skips houses, they'll say. Or, she leaves a stink behind. Or, don't trust him. He'll sell your secrets to the butcher. You've heard them all. And added a few clever ones yourself when the mood's been sour. It isn't all rumor and rivalry, sometimes it's outright sabotage. You remember the night someone swapped your almost clean pail for one with a hole in the bottom. A lesson in humility that left a trail of filth all the way down to the river. Or the time you found your hook missing, replaced by a twisted scrap of wire that snapped at the first real test. The worst was the friendly advice from a veteran, whispered over a shared crust of bread. Stick to your streets, friend. Or next week you'll be the one people empty their pots on instead of for. You laughed, but you walked a little faster after that. There's a social order here, as strange and shifting as any noble court. The old-timers get the best roots houses that pay in coin, not leftovers. Families who set their pots out clean and early, who know the value of silence and a steady hand. Newcomers get the scraps dodgy corners, grumbling customers. The blocks where more goes out the window than into your bucket. Every so often, someone tries to move up, working an extra lane or two in hopes no one will notice. Someone always notices. Retribution can be quick, a rude word, a nudge in the dark, a missing payment, a rumor that's just close enough to the truth to stick. Conspiracies flourish in the dark. You hear whispers: who's been cheating the council's collection tax, who's bribing the guards to look the other way, who's gotten cozy with the baker's daughter in exchange for an easier route. You try to stay out of it, keep your head down, but even that's a choice. There's a kind of dance to it, each worker circling their patch of city, making alliances and breaking them, always listening, always watching. Some nights, you're invited for a drink, a rare gesture, the sharing of a flask on a stoop or a half-stale pie divided 4 ways. Those nights, you trade stories and complaints, each one trying to sound tougher, less bothered, more clever than the rest. But the real battles happen in silence. Who gets the biggest houses? Who collects from the wealthiest merchants? Who risks the angry dog behind the tanner's yard? Or the unpredictable widow with her habit of throwing pots and coins out the same window? You find yourself walking a little faster, eyes sharper, weighing each greeting for hidden meaning. Did that lamplighter just nod? Or was he warning you off his cousin's street? Did the rag picker really mean good luck? Or is that code for keep moving? This block's mine. Every city has its king of the night, and every few months. The crown changes hands. Sometimes it's a quiet coup, the best routes shift. The old man with the limp disappears, and suddenly there's a new face at the crossroads, a little cockier, a little quicker to laugh. Sometimes it's louder, an argument outside the inn, a scuffle by the well, a row of broken pots lined up like trophies. The council pretends not to see, unless things get messy enough that even the day folk can't ignore it. Then, and only then, comes the warning. Keep it tidy, or, well, I'll be out of work. Yet for all the rivalry, there's a kind of respect grudging. Maybe, but real. You know the names, the quirks, the scars of the others who share the city's dirty work. You look out for each other, in your own prickly way. If someone doesn't show up for a few nights, you ask around, check the alleys, make sure they're not lying sick in the straw somewhere. If someone gets in trouble with a customer or a guard, There's usually a whispered word, a warning passed along. Take the other lane tonight, for all the talk of turf wars. You know deep down that you're all in the same sinking boat, sometimes. On rare nights when the moon is bright and the city is gentle, you find yourself walking beside a rival, bucket swinging in companionable silence. You trade stories, talk about the price of boots or the best way to clean a coat, and for a while, the rivalry fades. In those moments, you're not competitors, just survivors, keeping the city running while everyone else dreams. And then, with a nod and a grin, you split at the crossroads, each heading for your own patch of darkness, your own collection of secrets. The city closes in behind you, and the dance begins anew. A hush, the quiet shuffle of footsteps fading into the night. As another turf war slips into memory, at least until tomorrow, if necessity is the mother of invention, then misery is surely the godparent of every old remedy and superstition that ever took root in a medieval city. And when it comes to the misery of the night soil, man boots steeped in slop, nose permanently crinkled, dignity left somewhere behind the bakers, the lengths people will go to battle the stink are nothing short of legendary. The truth is, the job may be ancient, but so is the desperate hope that somewhere, somehow, there is a way to outwit the smell. It starts with herbs, always herbs. The city's market square, come morning, becomes a battlefield of odors time. Rosemary, lavender, sage armored against the onslaught of less savory scents. You know every apothecary's stall by heart. You've spent more than a few hard-earned coppers on bundles of dried mint and posies of pennyroyal, each one waved under your nose with promises of guaranteed relief. The old women selling them are confident tuck this sprig of rosemary behind your ear. Lad, and you'll not notice a thing, not even if the devil himself dances past. You do as you're told, of course, and for a fleeting second, the world smells almost bearable. Almost, soon enough, though, the aroma of your pocket garden is overwhelmed. The night air is a relentless tide, and no amount of herbs can dam it up for long, sometimes. The scented bundles even seem to make things worse, as if the stink has accepted your challenge and decided to fight back with renewed vigor. Still, you persist. You try cloves stuck in an orange luxurious, but sticky bundles of rue at your throat, pungent enough to give you a headache. Even a dab of camphor ointment under your nostrils, courtesy of the city barber. That one works, until your eyes start to water and you nearly stumble headfirst into a pile you'd rather forget. You aren't the only one searching for relief. Housewives leave bowls of vinegar on the windowsill, convinced it will absorb foul air. The innkeeper on Westgate swears by boiling hops and sage, filling his common room with such a cloud that the regulars complain they can't taste their beer. Even the city's priests get in on the act, waving censers heavy with incense at festival times. The air thick with frankincense and myrrh, though you suspect the only thing they're truly sanctifying is the smell of last night's fish stew. For your part, you improvise. You wrap a sprig of lavender into your scarf, tie a ribbon of lemon peel to your belt. Some nights, you chew parsley until your jaw aches. It doesn't help, but it gives you something to do besides curse your fate. There's always someone with the advice boil onion skins, then breathe the steam, or rub a little honey in your nostrils. The flies will love you, but the stink won't, and you try them all, hoping for a miracle, fearing only that you'll become a walking salad and still smell of the city's worst secrets. But there are darker remedies. 2, the superstition runs deep, especially in a trade that everyone wants to ignore. Some swear by charmed small amulets, twisted from tin or copper, tucked into pockets and boots. Keeps away evil humors, says the rag picker, who wears a necklace of carved bone and has never had so much as a cold, though his breath could kill a chicken at 10 paces. Others believe in rituals crossing themselves before every pail, spitting twice over their left shoulder, or whispering a prayer to Saint Fiacre, the patron saint of gardeners, night soil men, and anyone whose life depends on muck. You're skeptical, mostly, but late at night, with the moon high and your arms tired and your nose so assaulted, you're not sure it will ever recover. You find yourself muttering your own charms. Maybe you tap your pail 3 times before each round. Maybe you hum an old tune, believing, if only for a moment, that rhythm will ward off the worst. Maybe you keep that odd stone in your pocket, a gift from a child, rounded smooth as a river pebble. claim to be lucky. It isn't. But hope, like stink, is hard to get rid of. You've seen the more desperate measures, workers rubbing their skin with vinegar and lye, hands red and raw but cleaner, at least, than the memory of what they've touched. A few even burn their clothes at the end of each week, convinced that starting fresh will keep the city's curses at bay. You tried it once, the fire eating through wool and old stains. But the next morning, you were just as dirty and a lot colder. Lesson learned: remedies may soothe the mind, but not the trade, the city council. Naturally, pretends to care. There are laws written on yellowing parchments, posted at every gate, declaring that proper sanitation shall be maintained by the daily distribution of aromatic herbs and the monthly cleansing of streets with lime. It sounds impressive, until you realize the distribution consists of a cart rolling through the market with a handful of wilted thyme and a speech about civic duty. The lime helps for a day or two, until the next rain, when it washes away, leaving only slick patches and irritated city geese. Sometimes, you and your fellow workers share a joke about it. Why not simply move the whole city, someone suggests. Let the filth have the walls and well live in the fields. It always gets a laugh, bitter, weary, but honest. You pass a bottle of something strong, trade horror stories of the worst-smelling block, and for a while, you almost believe that laughter is its own remedy. It is, in its way. And there are days when the remedies almost seem to work. On a brisk spring morning, with the wind in your favor, the lavender tucked behind your ear might just overpower the city's funk. The baker, passing you a still warm roll, says, "You smell like a meadow today," and you choose to believe him, just for the sake of your sanity, for a precious hour. You walk your route with your head held high, the scent of hope clinging to your coat, but always. The night wins, the herbs wilt. The vinegar evaporates, the charm loses its shine. The city's breath is older, heavier, more stubborn than any bouquet you can muster. You end the shift as you always do, hands tired, nose resigned, remedies exhausted but not defeated. There's always tomorrow, always a new trick to try, a new superstition to adopt, a new hope to chase. You climb the steps to your tiny room, strip off your coat, and hang your scarf by the window, letting what breeze there is carry away the last of the night. Tomorrow, the herbs will be ready again, the remedies waiting, the cycle unbroken. Maybe one day, you think, someone will find a cure for the city itself, a hush, a scent of lavender lingering, and the hope, however faint, that the next night will be kinder. If you ever think the life of a night soil man is wild and lawless, think again. Medieval cities may feel chaotic, carts blocking the lanes, geese marching where they please, bakers hollering their wares with the same gusto they'd use for cursing. But beneath all the noise and confusion, the city runs on rules. Some are written down on curling scraps of parchment nailed to gates and tavern walls. Others passed from tongue to tongue, sharpened by gossip and worn smooth by repetition. When it comes to filth, the law is everywhere and nowhere. As a night soil man, you know the city's rules better than most, if only because you're the one most likely to be blamed if anything goes wrong. The city fathers, bless their starched collars and clean boots, spend endless hours arguing over proper disposal, sanitary practice, and the common good, you'd think. Listening to them, that they spend every morning wading through the same muck as you. In truth, their most dangerous encounter with waste is when the chambermaid spills a drop on the marble floor. Still, the laws are real. There are decrees about when and how you can collect never before midnight, so as not to offend the supper hour. Never after dawn, so as not to offend breakfast. There are rules about where you can dump your bucket far from the market, never by the wells, always past the city wall, unless you want a fine or, worse, a stern lecture from the head of the council himself, who has never been seen outdoors after dark. The city posts signs, "By order of the council, no dumping within the walls," as if that's all it takes to keep the streets clean. Some rules are practical. You are meant to carry a lantern for safety and civility, and a bell to warn the citizens. You tried ringing your bell once, but all it did was scatter dogs and draw curses from bleary-eyed merchants. These days, you keep it tucked in your pocket, only jingling it when the council inspectors make their rounds. Inspections are rare, of course, and usually more interested in bribes than breaches. There's a running joke among your fellow workers that the cleanest privy in the city belongs to the inspector's wife. Every now and then, a new law appears. One summer, after a particularly hot and fragrant spell, the council decreed that every household must add a handful of ash to their chamber pots before setting them out. Ash, they claimed, would sweeten the contents and mask unpleasant humors. All it did was turn the contents to sludge and give the city's children a new ammunition for street games. Another time, they tried to ban chamber pots altogether, insisting everyone use public privies. This was met with so much laughter and so many full pots left at the council door that the law quietly vanished before the next market day. The real law, you soon learn, is the one enforced by neighbors and necessity. If you're careless, if you splash the stoop or leave a trail, word spreads fast. The baker's wife has a tongue sharper than any magistrate's quill. The fishmonger's daughter counts the number of times you pass her window and isn't shy about reporting irregularities to the constable. There are rules about where you walk, how loudly you knock, how long you linger at each door. Break them, and you'll find yourself shunned, tips vanishing. Windows close tight no matter how you plead. There are laws about payment, too, officially. The city sets your fizo many coppers per pot, a little extra for large households or delicate circumstances. In reality, every block has its own customs. Some pay you in bread, some in coin, some in kind words and a quick prayer for your soul. If you ever try to collect twice for the same house, the word will reach the council, and you'll be lucky to escape with your boots. But if you skip a house, even by accident, you'll wake to find your reputation soiled more thoroughly than any pail you've ever carried. Some of the most dangerous laws are unwritten. There's an understanding among the night soil men: never poach another's root. Never speak ill of a rival's work. Never. Under any circumstances. Dump your load in a neighbor's garden. The last one is more than a rule. It's an article of faith. A line you do not cross unless you want a feud that lasts generations. You've heard tales half true, half wishful, of bucket battles, of pails flung over fences, of privies mysteriously overflowing after a careless word or an unpaid debt. And then there are the punishments. The council finds are real enough: a copper here, a copper there, always collected with a sigh and a warning about civic virtue. But the real punishments are social. The silent treatment from a whole street. The sudden cold shoulder from the butcher's wife who once saved you a heel of cheese. The sneer from the lamplighter as he passes. Wick held high, lighting the way for everyone but you. You'd take a dozen fines over the shame of being named and shamed in the market square. Sometimes the law feels like a game, the rules shifting from night to night. Depending on who's watching and who's whispering, you become adept at reading the mood of the city, knowing when to slip through the alleys unseen, when to announce your presence with a gentle cough or a tap of your hook. You learn which houses expect strict adherence and which are happy with a nod and a quick handoff. You keep your papers in order, just enough to satisfy the inspectors. Never so many that you can't claim ignorance if the wind changes. You find yourself muttering the laws under your breath. A litany to keep the chaos at bay. No dumping in the wells, no lingering after dawn, no jokes about the council's privy, no matter how good. The words become a kind of armor, flimsy but comforting, a shield against the city's shifting tides. Yet, for all the rules, the city endures. People do what they must. You do what you can. And the law, for all its parchment and pronouncements, bends to fit the shape of daily life. The streets are never truly clean. The rules never truly followed. But somehow, the city keeps moving. You keep moving. Toon law at a time, one pail at a time, balancing on the thin line between order and chaos, duty and farce. A hush settles as you glance at the latest notice nailed to the gate. A new rule, a new promise, a new hope that this time, maybe, the city will finally be as clean as the council dreams. If ever there was a profession that wore its reputation like a worn-out shoe, it's yours, the night soil man whispered about. Wrinkled noses, quick sidesteps in the market. There are saints and heroes, merchants and minstrels, even thieves who get a certain roguish respect. But you're the city's punchline, the shadow at the feast, the poor sod who always gets left out of the good stories. Yet, somehow, the truth is much more tangled, and if you're being honest, never, ever dull. You start the night invisible, but everyone knows you're there. Every alley, every corner, every creaking window is part of your unspoken audience. There's a sense that people would rather believe the streets clean themselves, that the refuse simply dissolves at dawn, leaving everything fresh and new. But let the collection stop for just one night, and suddenly, you're the most important, most despised, most urgently needed soul in the city. Where's the night soil man, they'll cry, voices pinched and noses pinched tighter, as if merely saying your title might make them catch something unpleasant. You've learned the looks, the sideways glances, the averted eyes, the tight smiles stretched across faces that want to be anywhere but near you. Kids point. Old women clutch their aprons. Merchants find urgent business at the far end of the lane. The butcher, who's up to his elbows in blood half the week, will hold his nose theatrically if he spots you coming. Just to get a laugh from the apprentices, here comes the walking plague, they shout. Not unkindly, but never kindly either. It's a joke, but you're the punchline every single time. And yet, your reputation isn't all bad. There's a strange, twisted kind of fame in being the one who does what no one else will. You become a part of the city's stories, even if it's always the wrong end. There are tales mostly invented, but who cares that you can empty a privy without spilling a drop? That you once carried a pot so foul it drove the rats out of town? That you know the secrets of every household, every marriage, every merchant's after-dinner troubles? Careful, the gossips warn. The night soil man knows everything. You just smile and keep walking. Secrets safe in your pail. People love to talk, and talk they do. There's a superstition half believed, half wished, that the night soil man can curse your house if you don't pay up, or if you slight him in public. You've seen people cross themselves as you pass, muttering a prayer or two for good measure. The innkeeper leaves a crust of bread and a coin, just in case. The apothecary swears by hanging garlic over his door. He says it keeps away both bad humors and bad workers. Sometimes you play along, tossing a wink to a nervous housemaid, or twirling your hook like a magician's wand. If they want a monster, you can give them a show. Reputation has its perks. People don't bother you in the street. The guards look the other way. The local thieves steer clear who wants to fence a second-hand chamber pot. You could walk through the market at noon, and the crowds would part like a stream flowing around a stone. Nobody expects you to be polite, to dress well, or even to smell decent. You are, for all your troubles, entirely free to be yourself, scruffy, blunt, and honest in ways the well-washed never dare. Still, the shadow of your work follows everywhere. You can see it in the way people talk when they think you're not listening, how your name comes up as a warning for children. Eat your greens, or the night soil man will come for you. As a punchline for the lazy, move your feet. Or you'll end up hauling buckets. Or as a scapegoat for every unexplained whiff or sudden sickness. Must be the night soil man's fault, they mutter. The irony isn't lost on you. The ones who shun you by daylight are the same ones who sleep easy because of what you do after dark. Then there's the other side of your reputation, the secret. Seldom spoken respect. It slips through the cracks, softer than the laughter, quieter than the jokes. It's the way a harried mother nods gratefully when you collect her pot before dawn. Or the gentle way an old man passes you a coin with a hand that lingers, just for a moment, as if to say, thank you, truly. There's the baker, who sets aside the end of a loaf, not because he has to, but because he remembers what it was like before you started coming. The lamplighter, who tips his hat as you pass, sharing the silent understanding of two men who know the city's dark corners better than anyone. You hear rumors about yourself, wild, strange, sometimes flattering, that you once stopped a fire by emptying your bucket on a burning roof, that you rescued a lost child from the dunghill, washed her up, and returned her home with only a soiled coat and a new story to tell, that you're a part rat, part ghost, part wizard, immune to sickness and fear. You don't correct them. Let the stories swirl. It's better than the truth, which is mostly that you're tired, underpaid, and hoping for a good meal and a soft bed. There are, inevitably, bad nights. Nights when a pot slips, or a rival undercuts your route, or the wind changes and the whole market square knows exactly where you've been. On those nights, you bear the brunt of every complaint, every sour face. You want to shout, try it yourself, but you don't. You just wipe your boots, square your shoulders, and keep walking. Tomorrow, someone will need you again, and the cycle will repeat: scorn, necessity, gratitude, and back to scorn, as predictable as sunrise. Yet, you wouldn't trade it, not really. There's an odd pride in surviving a job nobody else wants, in knowing the city as no one else does, from gutter to rooftop, from secrets whispered over pots to silent prayers before dawn, in knowing you matter. Even if the world pretends you don't, you may never be invited to the mayor's banquet or serenaded by minstrels, but you've got stories, scars, and a reputation that will outlive most. So you walk on, boots squelching, buckets swinging, the city's lowest and most unforgettable legend. You nod to the baker, tip your hat to the butcher, grin at the kids who shriek and run. It's a hard job, and a humble one, but it's never boring. A hush falls, laughter trailing in your wake, and you vanish into the patchwork shadows, low in standing, but high in stories. You might not have guessed it, nobody would. Looking at your battered coat and sloshing pail, but a night soil man holds one of the city's best positions for gathering secrets. Forget the market gossips with their flour-dusted aprons, or the nosy stable boys, or even the city guards who try to look important on their rounds. If you want to know what's really happening in the city after dark, follow the one carrying the bucket. No one notices you, and that's precisely the secret to hearing it all. You see, as you pass from window to window, stoop to stoop, you're moving through a world where the walls are thin, the voice is thick, and the need for privacy often dashed by the urgency of a full chamber pot, night after night. You're the silent shadow beneath windows where whispered arguments drift down on the cold air husbands pleading their case, wives making threats, lovers hissing promises or plotting escape. You don't linger, not obviously, anyway, but sometimes you can't help but catch a word or two, a snatch of laughter, a cry, in the big merchant houses. Secrets leak out like broth from a cracked bowl. You've heard plans for risky deals, rumors of goods hidden from the taxman, or the occasional bitter confession from a master to his own sleepless conscience. It's strange how often the truly rich talk to themselves when they think everyone's asleep. You've heard the master of the wool guild complain to the moon about his apprentice, his debts, the price of oats. He thinks he's alone, but you're there, invisible in the shadows, not so much by design as by habit. It's a strange power, knowing the city's hidden anxieties while no one knows yours. If it isn't confessions, it's gossip. The baker's daughter whispers about the cobbler's son. The fishmonger's wife accuses her neighbor of watering down her ale. The priest's housekeeper, scandalized, wonders aloud if the mayor's late-night visitor is really his cousin. You gather these stories like pebbles in your pocket, never intending to use them, but savoring the odd comfort of knowing that even the cleanest houses are a mess behind closed doors. Some secrets are unspoken, found only in the evidence you collect, the way a chamber pot is set out too early, too late, too heavy with the leftovers of a raucous party, or the delicate leavings of a meal skipped in worry. You learn whose children are sick, whose husband drank too much, whose cook is new to town and unfamiliar with the local spice that makes every dish move a bit faster through the system. You never judge, but you do notice. How could you not? The city's health and moods pass through your hands before they pass into history. And then there are the close calls, the moments where curiosity and discretion wrestle. Once, you caught a glimpse of a letter fallen beside a hasty scrawl, the ink still wet. Another time, a gold ring dropped in panic, rescued with a grateful gasp and a blush from the housemaid. You could blackmail half the city if you cared to, but you don't. The city is a maze of secrets, and the first rule of survival is knowing which ones to keep to yourself. Not every secret is dark. Sometimes you catch a bit of song drifting down from an open window, a melody so sweet you pause, breath held, until it fades into the clatter of boots and the clang of your hook. Sometimes it's a child's laughter, or the sound of two friends telling stories late into the night, their words blurring into warmth and comfort. These are the city's soft truths, and you carry them with you. Little reminders that not all secrets are meant to be kept with a frown. You also become an expert in the city's rhythms, the times of day when the windows are safest, the streets quietest, the dogs least likely to bark at your passing. You know who is awake late for honest reasons, a midwife, a baker, a rag picker, and who lingers in the dark with mischief on their mind. It's a strange talent, knowing when to move quickly, when to slow down, when to pause and listen, more than once. This skill has saved you from a run-in with a city guard, a rival worker, or a pot emptied by a careless hand. Some nights, the city itself seems to speak to you. The soft thud of footsteps in an alley, the sudden hush as you approach a window, the flicker of a candle snuffed out just before you pass. You wonder what people would say if they knew you were listening, if they realized their secrets pass nightly within arm's reach of someone with nothing better to do than remember. You could be the city's greatest storyteller, or its most dangerous liability. Among the other night soil men, there's an unspoken understanding here: all say nothing. You swap tales at the edge of the field where waste is dumped. Not names, but stories, slightly exaggerated for humor and dignity. Heard the mayor's daughter is in love with the fishmonger's boy, someone says. And you all laugh, imagining the city council's faces if that were true. The truth, you know, is usually stranger and far less tidy. You might think this makes you lonely, all these secrets tucked away. But you find a curious company in the knowledge. The city is less frightening when you know its faults, less cold when you carry the weight of other people's worries alongside your own. There's even a strange kind of comfort in the anonymity no one confesses to the night soil man. Not directly, but everyone confides in the darkness, and you are its quiet witness. Sometimes, when you finally climb the stairs to your small, lamp-lit room, you think about writing it all down, an epic of privies and pettiness, a chronicle of the city as seen from the gutters. You never do. Some secrets, you know, are better left unsaid, dissolved into the city's dawn like fog. Still, every once in a while, someone will look at you with a glint of respect or fear in their eyes, as if they sense you know more than you let on. You just smile, nod, and walk on, bucket swinging, heart oddly lighter for all the secrets carried. A hush, a curtain closing, the soft click of a latch, and you are on your way again, keeper of the city's nighttime confessions, unseen and unforgettable. There's a peculiar kind of peace that comes with the end of your shift, a peace that tastes of exhaustion and the faint, sharp tang of cold morning air. The first thin light of dawn spills over the city walls, painting the cobblestones a sickly pearl and making even the most battered roofs gleam like something out of a storybook. You are still out there, boots crusted with last night's journey, arms aching with the memory of 100 heavy pots. Pail swinging lighter now, almost empty, for the first time in hours. You feel weightless, unburdened, not just in body, but somewhere deeper too. You catch yourself walking slower, savoring the quiet before the city fully wakes. The streets are almost empty. The last drunks stumble home, voices ragged and sweet as old songs. A baker's apprentice is already up, coaxing the ovens to life, sending ribbons of warmth and the promise of fresh bread swirling out into the lanes. There's a hush, as if the city is taking a last slow breath before the world rushes back in. In this delicate hour, you're not the night soil man, not the lowest rung on the city's ladder. You're just another soul beneath the paling sky, part of the great, unseen machinery that keeps this place turning. You take the long way home, through the quieter alleys, past shuttered shops and doorways swept clean in anticipation of day. You nod to the lamplighter, his last torch snuffed and his face washed in gold by the rising sun. He tips his hat, and you share a moment of silent camaraderie. Few understand what it means to work in darkness, to serve while others sleep, to become invisible for a living. There's a comfort in the wordless exchange, a flicker of pride in the quiet dignity of your work. Sometimes you meet a milkmaid, yawning and cheerful, who grins at you as if your burden is no different from hers. Sometimes it's the rag picker, shoulders slumped under a sack of the city's cast-offs, muttering about a lucky find or a cut thumb. Sometimes it's just you and the birds, wheeling and cawing overhead, greedy for the crumbs and scraps that day will soon deliver. The city changes at sunrise. Windows creak open, faces blink into the new light, and suddenly, the streets fill with the sounds of life laughter, gossip, the clang of a pot, the snap of a tablecloth. You feel yourself disappearing, the cloak of invisibility settling back around your shoulders. The people who needed you so desperately in the night turn away, pretending not to notice the scent you trail, the stains on your boots, the calluses on your hands. For a moment, you miss the hush of night, the small, secret world that belongs only to you and the other invisible ones. But the morning brings its own pleasures. You pass the baker's, and he tosses you a bun, warm and fragrant, crust dusted with sugar. You nod, a silent thank you, and savor it as you walk, licking your fingers, letting the taste wash away the memory of vinegar and lye and all the city's other perfumes. The sun creeps higher, gilding the rooftops, and for a brief, shining second, everything smells like hope and honey. You reach your own doorstep, a battered affair, the paint worn by years of boots and rain, and set your bucket down with a sigh. Inside, the room is small, but it is yours. You peel off your coat, your gloves, your scarf, and set them by the window where the morning breeze can chase away what the night left behind. You splash your face with water, cold and bracing, scrub your hands until they sting, and sit on your cot, feeling the ache settle into your bones. Some mornings, you sleep straight away, letting the city's noise become a lullaby. Other days, you linger by the window, watching as the world wakes. You see children racing down the lane, dogs barking at the pigeons, a merchant's wife airing out her rugs. You smile at the simple messiness of it all. How, despite your best efforts, life always finds a way to spill over, to clutter, to thrive. Your mind drifts as you watch. You think of the night just passed, the pots carried, the secrets overheard, the close calls and lucky escapes. You remember a kind word from a housemaid, a shared joke with a fellow worker, the way the city looked when the moon painted silver across the rooftops. You let yourself be proud, just for a moment, that you are part of something bigger, that you keep the wheels turning while the world dreams. You wonder what the day will bring, new gossip, new complaints, new laws posted on the gate. Maybe someone will thank you. Maybe someone will curse you. Maybe the world will roll on as if you never existed at all. It doesn't matter. You'll be there when the bell tolls midnight again, ready to step out into the darkness, pail in hand, facing whatever the city throws your way. You stretch, yawn, and finally let your eyes close, the sun warm on your face, outside. The city hums with life, the last traces of your night's work already fading into the day's distractions. Another shift done, another sunrise survived. There is something holy, you think, in this quiet ending, in the return from darkness to light, in the knowledge that you did your job, and did it well. A hush, one last exhale. The city keeps turning, and you are ready for the next round, whenever it comes. So, here you are, sitting on the edge of your cot in the gray-blue light, boots finally off, feet tingling with a relief so deep you can feel it all the way up in your jaw. Your shift is over. The city has rolled itself awake on the other side of your thin, rattling shutters. There's bread on the table and a trickle of sunlight creeping across the floorboards. You stretch your toes, close your eyes for a moment, and ask yourself the question no one else would dare utter aloud. Would you do it all again? It's not the first time the thought has crept in, slinking through the cracks like a draft in winter. You could have run off, joined a merchant's caravan, apprenticed to a blacksmith, tried your luck at the docks or in the fields. Plenty have. You remember the faces of those who didn't last, the apprentice who cried after his first splash, the city boy with soft hands who vanished after one bad week, the dreamer who tried to organize the night soil men into a brotherhood and ended up on a different route every night until he gave up and left for good. Some people say you must be desperate, stubborn, or just daft to keep at it as long as you have, you suppose they're not wrong. Still, there's something in the rhythm, the quiet pulse of the work. There's a strange satisfaction in knowing the city's secrets, not just the whispered words and hidden scandals, but the real secrets. The way the streets curve, where the gutters run, which windows open at midnight, which doors creak at dawn. You know the city's moods the way a shepherd knows his flock when it's uneasy, when it's sick, when it's about to boil over with trouble or celebration. It's your city. Even if it pretends you don't exist, there's pride, tood, quiet. Battered as your boots, but pride all the same. Pride in a job that no one else wants but everyone needs. In the simple act of keeping the wheels turning, the water flowing, the houses clean enough that children can play and bakers can bake and merchants can count their coins without wrinkling their noses every 3 seconds. You know you'll never get a statue in the square or a poem written in your honor, but there are other kinds of legacy. The city works because you do. The memories flicker through your mind the first night you made it through the whole route without dropping a pot. The way the moon glinted off the city gates, the laughter you shared with a rival in the cold, the warmth of a loaf handed over by the baker as a thank you for a job nobody else noticed. You remember, too, the accidents, the splashes, the curses, and the bruise show sometimes you wanted to throw your pail in the river and walk away. But you didn't. You stayed. That counts for something. Even if it's only something you tell yourself on the loneliest mornings. You smile at the odd little perks. The secrets only you know which merchant is shortchanging his customers, which noble sneaks out after midnight, which house always leaves a pot out too late and then blames you when the street stinks. You've learned to take the laughter with the scorn, to find humor in the worst moments, to shrug off what can't be changed. You are, after all, the city's ultimate survivor, a magician of mud, a prince of privies, the one who walks through muck and comes out, if not clean, at least a little bit wiser. There are regrets, too. If you're honest, you wish for more quiet mornings, less backache, more thanks and fewer sideways glances. You wonder sometimes what it would be like to be the baker, the lamplighter, the city clerk with his quill and his dry hands. You wonder about leaving, about waking up somewhere the air smells of grass instead of old vinegar and onions. But every time you think of it, really think of it, there's a part of you that pulls back. This is your city. For all its flaws, you know its secrets, its stories, its stubborn, irrepressible heart. Would you do it all again? You weigh the question as the sunlight creeps higher, dust motes dancing in the stillness. Maybe you would. Maybe you wouldn't. Maybe you don't have to choose. Maybe the answer is in the doing, in the way you get up each night, pull on your battered boots, wrap your scarf around your face, and step out into the shadows with your bucket in hand. Maybe the question doesn't matter. Not really. What matters is the work, the quiet pride, the city breathing easy because you've done what needed doing. You laugh soft, a little tired, but real, somewhere outside. A bell rings. The world is waking for another round, another night, another cycle of work and forgetting. You feel the ache in your arms, the slow comfort of a job finished, the odd, persistent hope that the city will remember you, if only for a moment. In the hush before the next sunrise, you close your eyes and let the question drift away, replaced by the memory of moonlit streets, whispered secrets, laughter in the dark, and the sweet, simple fact that, for all its mess, you've belonged here, night after night, step after step, a hush. The city waits. And you know, in your bones, you'll answer the call again, one more time, and then one more after that, for as long as you're needed, for as long as the city remembers.